development control, which has been a while in the going through the processes, but I think that's helpful for people to understand a little more clearly what we do. It brings us into line with other planning committees around the country as well, who are generally called planning committee. So welcome to everybody, and also to those online watching us. Safety instructions, we're not expecting a fire alarm test tonight, so if the fire alarm goes, then it's genuine, so please make your way out of the main door through which you came in and down here and assemble on the paved area in front of the cathedral. And toilets are by the main door to the left and to the right. If you want to go to the toilet, they are there. Apologies for absence. I don't believe we have any apologies for absence, although we have one or two councillors not yet present. Minutes of the previous meeting. Nobody has told me that there were any amendments to the required those minutes, but you can bring that up here if you want. Anyone wish to amend anything? Any got comments on the previous minutes? No? Okay. You happy for me to approve those, sign them? Yes? Great. Okay, thanks. Some guy seconded that, and action sheet.
I'm happy to. We had a verbal conversation. Apologies about the first item on the action sheet. That's been dealt with.
Exactly, and Jonathan has kindly emailed us with an update on what the Constitution says about the role of the planning committee with respect to enforcement powers of the council, which I'm sure is something we'll discuss again. But we're making steps forward on understanding that a little bit better, I think. Have Councillor Stone. Are we expecting anyone else? Councillor McCowie. Okay, no problem. Appeals. I normally ask Jonathan just to give us a rundown on anything of interest in the appeals to the Planning Inspectorate on our decisions, and if are there any questions from councillors? We have a report on that. Welcome councillors' questions after Jonathan has just gone through if there's anything.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't think there are any appeal decisions in particular that I was going to highlight, but really just I think in terms of a general comment, it appears again in terms of the decisions that we're receiving, a significant proportion of those are being dismissed, which is good to see. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions on the appeals item.
Thank you. It's good that they're being dismissed because that means that the Planning Inspectorate is, broadly speaking, endorsing the decisions that we make here, either in committee or under delegated powers, which is always cheaper for us. But obviously, it's a measure of the fact that the government thinks that we are implementing the process appropriately, correctly. Councillors, any questions on any particular items there? Councillor Pulteney.
Just to congratulate officers on the, there were a huge number of the BT street hubs that were all facing, every single one of them was being appealed. I appreciate there are 2 LCD screens that have had appeals allowed in Central, but it looks like what was a huge volume of appeals all just got dealt with quite neatly together. Did we get costs on that, could I ask, or was that...
No, we didn't make applications for costs on those. There is, however, an appeal that appears in the list of decisions where we, as the council, were actually successful in a cost award, which was in relation to a withdrawn appeal, which is, I believe, it's number 55 in the list of appeal decisions, albeit a decision wasn't actually issued on the appeal, but that relates to an appeal against an HMO, which we served an enforcement notice on.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep, that's all good news. I don't think, some of this stuff is littering our streets, isn't it, really? And it's a disappointment when other people within the so-called, as is now, public sector choose to litter our pavements with things as part of their business model. But they're not actually serving the interests of residents particularly well at the moment. Enforcement, anything, Jonathan, you'd like to highlight in enforcement actions?
Well, no, really. I mean, just to say the update report is there again, which just provides a bit of an overview in terms of the work that the team is dealing with. Again, whilst there are no notices to note in the report this month, I understand that there are some notices that are currently sort of with legal for review. So, yeah, there may be some on the way there.
Thank you. And for those who are interested in our enforcement work, there was a report went recently to the Economy and Skills outlining our new enforcement strategy. So I refer you to the last Economy and Skills Policy Committee, where you will find that report on the website. So you can see a little more about what we do, what the constraints are on that. Because it's an area that does concerns all of us, actually. Concerns members of the public quite a lot, quite rightly, and concerns councillors quite a lot. So I think that report is well worth reading. Thank you. Any particular questions on enforcement, or shall we move on to the... right, we shall move on to the public forum for...
Just noticed we haven't done declarations of interest yet.
You're quite right. Because people weren't all here, and I do particularly want to ask people this question and for them to listen and to be clear on it. Is there any one of you councillors who has any declarations of interest? Are you all approaching all the items on this agenda with a completely open mind? If not, or you have a question about what that means, could you please raise your hand? Councillor Pulteney, I think yours was up first.
Mine was just to confirm absolutely there are no decisions relating to Bravas Restaurant in front of us tonight. The entire item in full has been deferred, in which case, no.
So, no. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Gooch?
Yes, I'd just like to say that although I called in the Vining Hall because there were a lot of objections and I'd been asked to do so, I did so as the ward councillor, but there are things to discuss and I'm happy to weigh them up objectively.
Thank you very much. Anybody else got anything to say? Councillor McCowie?
Yeah, same as Councillor Botany.
Okay. So, fine. I will now assume that we're all approaching all of these with an open mind and we have no interests to declare. Thank you, Alison, for reminding me of that. Great. So we now move on to the items and we take the public forum statements just before each item. First item on the agenda, therefore, is not the agenda that we have at the on the thing because Cotham Hill dropped out. It's the Vining Hall, Etloe Road, Bristol, and we have some public forum statements. And in fact, because we have a slightly smaller agenda, you know, I'm not going to pin people down. I'm not going to put a clock here or anything like that. But please, it is supposed to be, you know, a minute, 2 minutes or so, and I think we will have got the idea by the end of 2 minutes. So first of all, Ms. Becky Warren. Is Becky here? No. Mr. Andrew Wright? No. Ms. Abigail Shepherd? No. Mr. Tim Ilston? No. Mr. Colin Pemble? Yes. Thanks, Colin. You've got the microphone there for you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Hope you can hear me. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm the agent for the applicant. The applicant being a business lady who runs a number of nurseries in Bristol. The one at Etloe Road for 30 odd years, but she's found it increasingly difficult to operate it there for a number of reasons. Difficult to get staff, changing legislation, a very costly building to run, and for her it's no longer viable, so hence it closed. She has since marketed it, but no one's been forthcoming to take on the building as a nursery. So she's looked at reusing it, and because she lives relatively locally, she's got contacts. Yeah, she thinks she can actually put the historic sort of former chapel to good use as a community building where a number of different people can use it for recreation and sort of leisure type community-based uses. And then where the existing sort of extensions are, where historically there was a house at the end of the junction onto Etloe Road, the architects have designed quite imaginatively and creatively a new replacement building, an HMO. Now, this is actually an unusual circumstance where it solves another problem the applicant has, in that she operates Torwood House Nursery around the corner, finds it very difficult to get staff because staff can't afford to live locally. So she's got an ideal site where she can actually accommodate her staff and who can work in the nursery around the corner. So it's a sort of win-win in that respect. I appreciate the area is difficult in terms of parking. I mean, she used to have 9 staff who worked at the nursery, so obviously that generated need for parking spaces, and particularly staff who had to come from quite far afield. And obviously there's all the activity associated with the daily use of the nursery. We don't think the HMOs will generate a particular high level of car demand because the people she employs who can live locally without a car, because it is very accessible, walking distance of White Ladies Road and Henleys. So, it's a very creative solution to a number of problems, and we believe it actually makes a very good use of the site and a very good design by the architect. So hopefully you can see that and grant the application approval today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nigel, is it Naden? I do apologise if I've pronounced the surname wrong. No, Nigel's not here. Professor Robin Hamilton, I've seen. Professor, welcome.
Good evening, councillors. So my name is Robin Hambleton. I'm Professor of City Leadership at the University of the West of England here in Bristol. I've been a professional qualified RTPI member for over 50 years, and I'm a Bristol City Council partner. I've submitted a statement to you explaining that this application is a classic example of what urban planners call town cramming, meaning massive overdevelopment of a very small site. So in my statement, I suggest 4 reasons why this should definitely be refused by you tonight. The first one is that it is clearly overdevelopment of the site. The properties around this area are actually 2-storey in Royal Albert Road, Bayswater, Etloe Road. This is a giant, towering 3-storey building which will be overbearing and really is an excessive example of town cramming. Secondly, the design is not in keeping with this conservation area. I'm really quite startled that it's made it to a committee at all. The surrounding townscape is really very different from this tall building that's proposed, which is right up to the building line. There's no other buildings on the whole of Etloe, on the whole of Bayswater adjacent to this property that are up to the building line, because it's not what you have in this conservation area. So on urban design terms, it's really poor. Thirdly, there are 4 reasons. Thirdly, there's no need for a community hall. We've got plenty of community halls. Several other objectors have explained this, so that there's no need for it. And fourthly, I think this is the most important. The road safety conditions in this area are really troubling. And in my report to you, in my statement, I give you the evidence prepared by SCAN, when the developers of the St Christopher site proposed a major development there a couple of years ago. So we had 298 respondents from a large number of local residents, including 125 people with parents with children at Westbury, at the Westbury Park Primary. So the responses were really alarming there from residents about the road safety, particularly for children. I really want you to think about the children when you make your decision tonight. The advice you've received is there won't be any additional parking in effect. This is nonsense. There are 6 units in this tall building, a tiny site, and that means there could be at least 6 cars. This, according to the National Policy Planning Framework, section 116, is clearly, and I quote, unacceptable impact on road safety. It's absolutely appalling. So, Chairman, I'd like to reinforce the fact that a lot of people have objected to this on those grounds. Interestingly, the applicant, Samantha Packer, actually agrees with me. In her objection to the for-partnership proposal at St Christopher's, she said in writing to the City Council in 2023 that her main concerns were parking and overdevelopment of the site. So the applicant who has opposed that idea in the past in writing is now contradicting what she said before. So I urge you to reject the scheme tonight, but please could you record all 4 reasons for refusal, as this is important if the applicant decides to go to appeal. These will be sound reasons which, if it does go to appeal, will be very compelling for an inspector. So please reject this proposal tonight outright. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kevin Chidgey. Mr. David Haves.
Hello. Distance okay?
Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Unlike the previous speaker, I'm just a layman who lives approximately 100 metres from the site. And in terms of preparing for this meeting, I have read and reread the proposals and the council, the officials' recommendation. I'd like to say the following, please. Etloe Road and Bayswater Avenue is essentially one long street, and the Vining Hall site on the corner of the intersection with that Vining Hall site on the corner of the intersection with Royal Albert Road. The hall actually sits on the Bayswater Avenue side of the junction, opposite number 40 Bayswater Avenue. The development proposal, therefore, needs to consider all 3 roads and situations and fails to. There must be approaching 100 references to Etloe, but a couple to Royal Albert, which adjoins it, and I can't find none that are relevant to Bayswater Avenue, which I say is actually just as proximate to the site as Etloe, in fact slightly more so, bearing in mind its actual position. So the development process there needs to consider those, yes, but just a couple, and none of them are relevant to us, but also it's therefore incomplete and flawed, in my opinion. In a conservation area, all the frontages along Bayswater comply with the building line setback principles as per Council Policy DM26, as do the existing buildings to be replaced on the site itself. Proximate to the site of the houses in Royal Albert Hall and all of the row of the first 7 houses visually affected in Etloe have front gardens, all complying with the setback principle. The proposed development, in my opinion, fails to comply with the above and other aspects of DM26 in terms of responding to the height, scale, shape and form of the existing buildings, attempting to abut it directly to the walkway on one of the most hazardous corners of the neighbourhood. And if I may just make one additional point, yes, which is the fact that the lady concerned has in fact sold her nursery, which is in the adjacent street, apart from closing this one. So there are no particular She has no particular nursery facilities immediately adjacent to the site for her staff to the other one. The nearest one is in Clifton. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody who've put in a statement or I've missed out? No? That's great. Thank you, everybody who's contributed. And now we move to the officer's report. Thank you.
Good evening. So this application concerns the Vining Hall on Etloe Road in Westbury-on-Trim and Henleys Ward. And it proposes the demolition of the existing extension to Vining Hall, construction of a 3-storey building to a 6-person HMO, as well as refurbishing the Vining Hall as a community facility. The site is within the Downs Conservation Area, and to the east of the site is the Grade 2 listed Grace House. The surrounding context is predominantly residential in nature. The area is characterised by high density, Victorian terraced and semi-detached pairs. There is no dominant architectural style or material on this section of Etloe Road, and there are a variety of building styles, roof forms and building lines. The proposal site itself comprises of the Vining Hall, which was originally built in 1891 as a mission hall and has since been used for various community uses. It has the character of a chapel with Gothic style windows and a gabled frontage, and the single-storey extension was added later on in early 20th century. So I'll go through the proposal in more detail. Just to note that amendments were made to the design of the original application following initial officer assessment, where windows were added to the first and ground floors of the principal elevation of the proposed HMO. So this is the existing and proposed block plan. As you can see on the proposed block plan on the right, the extension will be replaced by the HMO here, and some external amenity space will be retained. And here we've got the existing floor plans. The existing extension forms part of the Vining Hall here, and the rest of the site is formed of external space, which is currently hard standing. Here we've got the proposed site and ground floor plans, or floor plans. So there's 3 bedrooms at ground floor, 2 bedrooms at first, with a combined kitchen and living area, and 1 bedroom second floor, as well as another shared living area. And there's 3 bathrooms altogether. And there's an enclosed garden and bike stores and bin stores. For the proposed elevations that we can see here, the HMO would be finished in clay brick with bathstone detailing, natural slate for the roof, timber doors and timber/sliding sash windows. And the community hall would be upgraded, but there would be no extensions or changes to its appearance. Excuse me. From these side elevations, you can see that there wouldn't be any additional overlooking to neighbouring properties, and from the perspective of residents on Royal Albert Road, the only visible part of the new building would be this section of roof here. So here are some artist impression images. They were submitted with the original plans, and at the time the windows to the front were filled in recessed areas of brick, and we've sought amendments since, so they're now windows, but they're in the same location and proportions as shown in these images. So a total of 61 objections were received following the initial consultation, and after amendments were made, neighbours were reconsulted and a further 40 objections were received. The main concerns raised were to do with the design, how it be out of character with the area and the conservation area, concerns regarding the introduction of an HMO to this neighbourhood, and increased parking pressures and safety issues, and concerns regarding the community use of the hall. The scheme was referred to committee by a local ward councillor who raised concerns regarding style, size and specification being unsuitable for the location and conservation area, pressure on parking, and the fact that the community is already well served by halls at both ends of the same road. So I'll address the main concerns in line with our assessment of the scheme. And yes, as we saw in the previous slide, the main concerns are design, HMO use, community hall use, and highways. So the application was assessed by urban design officers. Etloe Road, or this section of Etloe Road, has no single dominant style. There's a mix of building forms, roof types and setbacks. It's considered that the proposed design responds to this varied context. The combination of traditional elements with contemporary details is considered to be positive and in line with policy DM26, which supports contemporary design where it complements the existing context. And the high quality materials are proposed and are appropriate for conservation area setting. The front elevation reads as 2 stories when viewed from street level, with the upper level set behind a parapet, which reduces visual bulk. There are similar 3-story forms further up Etloe Road, so this wouldn't be completely out of character. Bringing the building up to the pavement is also considered to be acceptable, as this reflects other examples along the road. In terms of overdevelopment of the site, BCS 20 supports development making the most efficient use of land with an emphasis on reusing previously developed sites, and supports higher density development around the city centre or near other designated centres. Overall, it's considered that the scheme represents a high-quality design that harmonises traditional and contemporary elements, preserves the character of the Downs Conservation Area, while making efficient use of land in line with policies. In terms of the HMO use, data shows that within a 100-metre radius of the site, there are 111 properties, 3 of which are HMOs. That's 2.7%, which is below the 10% threshold set out in Bristol's HMO policies, meaning harmful impacts are not expected. In this case, the low concentration of HMOs locally means that introducing a single HMO is unlikely to cause harm, as detrimental impacts on residential quality and character typically happen cumulatively. The development would also contribute to the diversity of housing choices within this area, in line with local plan policies and the NPPF. Overall, evidence shows the proposal wouldn't unbalance the housing mix or harm residential character. It would comply with local policy and guidance and would support housing choice without undermining community cohesion. So with regards to the community hall use, concerns have been raised about the use of the existing building as community hall, given that there are already community halls at either end of the street, as well as concerns relating to lack of transparency over what the specific use of the community hall would be. The planning process assesses land use, and specific details on what exact community function the hall would be used for are not required as part of the assessment. Under local plan policy DM5, the loss of a community use is acceptable if a community facility can be retained or reinstated as part of any redevelopment. Nurseries fall under the definition of community use, therefore it's considered beneficial that the nursery is to be replaced with the community hall. The scheme proposes a flexible space for a range of activities, which is considered to enhance community infrastructure and contribute positively to the area. The application was assessed by the Council's Transport Development Management team. The lack of on-site parking is considered to be acceptable, given that the site is in a sustainable location. Nearby junctions already have parking restrictions, and a condition would be placed on any permission that would require car club membership for HMO residents to reduce car ownership. Census data suggests the HMO would generate demand for around 3 vehicles, which the transport team confirms does not meet the NPPF's test of severity. The previous nursery use likely created more prolonged daytime parking demand than the proposed community hall would. The scheme also supports active travel and reduces reliance on cars by including cycle storage for both the HMO and the hall. So to conclude, overall the design is considered to be acceptable within the conservation area setting. The HMO use is not considered to have a significant detrimental impact on residential amenity and character, and the community use is considered to be a suitable use of the land, and the technical assessment by the transport team show that there would be limited impacts. Officer recommendation is therefore to approve.
Thank you very much. So we move now to councillor questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, I have one. It's the councillor, yeah. But okay, I'm writing everyone's name down so that there's no argument over the order. Councillor Portney was second and Councillor Gooch was third. Abby, over to you first.
Thank you. I don't think my microphone is working. But I press this.
Tom will, I can hear you. I think everyone can hear you, but Tom will work on it.
Okay. Yes, my question was about the partly the bike storage, but also the communal, the sort of space around the development. So you mentioned how there's bike storage for both the development and for both the hall and the HMO. So I wondered on that sort of day, the floor plan, is it the cycle storage that's in front of the hall that is for the hall, and the cycle storage that's between the two is for the HMO? Okay, and therefore also the second question is that strip of land. So you've got the little triangle private garden, and then a strip of land. Is that for access to the hall or just for the HMO?
It would be both, because there's doors. The main access to the hall is at the front, but the hall can access that little strip of land as well.
Okay, but the triangle is just private to the HMO? Oh, I see,
yeah, that's for the HMO. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Councillor Portney.
Hi, thanks. Actually, building on the theme, I suppose, in respect of the impact of additional vehicle movements around the area, clearly work's been done around the sort of HMO and the number of cars per occupant and that sort of thing. But I was just wondering to what extent the impact of the community hall has been assessed in terms of additional vehicle movements. I saw references to it in the report. I was just wondering if there were any additional conditions that were specifically addressing that, if I'd missed them or what those might have been.
It's quite difficult for us in TDM to put conditions on small developments like this, but we do expect the evidence to come to be a cumulative impact. But as clearly pointed out, we TDM can't object if it's not deemed severe, but we do suggest that like doing the car clubs and things like that are the sort of things that we can ask for. So everywhere in Bristol has got traffic problems, and there's a finite amount of curbside, and if an area has not requested parking controls in there, then under the fact that it's not deemed a severity, we're a bit stuck on what we can actually. We can't put car free on a development where there's nothing for them to have a permit or anything like that. But if they, I think it would be reasonable to put for any future controls to have no permits for that site. I think if you're so moved to accept the recommendation of my colleagues, I think, especially as the agents here, we could probably get that agreed. That would be something I think is reasonable. So it's we put something on that building that says, should there be a parking enforcement scheme in the area, they would not be entitled to any permits. That's the only real suggestion I can make to help on that.
I think just to add on that, that is covered in the recommended advices, the restriction on parking permits for in the scenario where there's a future controlled parking zone or residence parking scheme.
Oh, thanks. Just to clarify, my concern was more or less I couldn't. It's hard to assess the capacity of the hall, but for example, if capacity was 60 and a third of them arrive by cars, and you have a pay and display situation in the evenings or free parking, I know a lot of the residence parking zones don't extend into the evenings. Suddenly there is potentially an addition of a load of car movement. I was just wondering if that had been factored in. That was all it was. My only other query was in respect of the number of bed spaces in the HMO. One of the things that's come in front of the committee a few times is that internal alterations are rarely a matter for planning. As in, once consent is given, it's quite easy to sort of move walls around internally without requiring planning consent. I was just wondering, given that it's a 6-bed, that's obviously into the realms of the compulsory scheme and the higher number for planning purposes as well. Obviously, the rooms currently are very generous. There's also a sort of an unused snug room. Would it potentially be possible for the developer to then increase the number of rooms internally to say 10 without requiring any additional licenses or planning consents?
I think in a scenario where that happened, obviously that would be an enforcement sort of matter that would need to be investigated. But I think as this would be considered a large HMO, any potential intensification could be considered, again, sort of material and require further planning assessment.
There is also car usage associated with its current usage, isn't there? So we're not talking about all of this as additional car usage. We are talking about the difference between what it's now being used as and what it is going to be used as potentially, and whether or not that could be categorised as a severe change on a development of that size. Councillor Gooch.
Sorry, I've got quite a few questions. One is,
We're all having button troubles these days.
Sorry, no, mine's just being forgetful. So the first question I have really is about soundproofing. This is something that I got in an email from a resident a couple of days ago who lives directly next door to the hall, and she was raising the point that there are currently it's being used as a nursery during the day, so mainly mornings and early afternoons. Evening use could mean late night parties, etc. And they don't know whether there is any soundproofing as a condition. So that's my first question. Secondly, it's one about the windows here. So the original windows on these are they're sort of, there's a stone frame, and then the windows inside are sort of pointed Gothic style windows, and I don't know whether they're original or not, but it looks like the side of the building is going to have modern windows, so we'd be losing those stone frames around the window on the actual hall, which is kind of like a chapel. The other thing was whether or not how far the sort of local vernacular goes with regard to styling, because you have to go 100 metres down Etloe Road to find a 3-storey building and a brick building. All of the surrounding buildings are actually stone with brick detailing rather than all brick with stone detailing. The current building is white render with the stone. So it would be quite a bit of a change. So I'm wondering, you know, when you say there's no overall style, when it feels to the locals that there is an overall style and that this is a style of the other end of the road rather than where it actually is, how far is the measurement that you're taking to take that into consideration? And yeah, also this rule about this setting back, which on the rest of the road there is the setback. Again, you don't get the setback until you get 100 metres down Etloe Road towards the main road. So, sorry, lots of questions.
So was the first question whether the hall would have soundproofing? We haven't, the sound pollution officer assessed the case and didn't recommend any sort of soundproofing, as they didn't see it was an issue, given that the hall doesn't share any party walls with other buildings, but that can be added as a condition. There's also a time restriction conditions that can be put on any permission, which can be agreed afterwards. In terms of how far up the road we're looking for character, I would say Etloe Road. I mean, Bayswater Avenue and Etloe Road are sort of divided. There's a separation with the junction of St Helena Road and that small green space. And I would say the immediate surrounding context opposite the road, got some varied materials and the setbacks from the road as well. Yeah, I would say are not so far as to be completely separate from the site itself. What was the other question?
Oh, the windows.
Could you repeat that question? Sorry.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've seen any photographs of the building as it is. They're not in, looking at the design. Sorry, I'm just pulling up to see if buildings as they are actually in there. I can't find them, what the building looks like. But they look like Gothic chapel windows, basically, down the side. They're similar to the ones that are on the front. So when you look at the plans and the elevations, you can see there's kind of the Gothic style window on the front. The original windows on the side are basically a square stone shape, and then the timber frames inside have an arch to them. They're double arches. So they don't look like the windows that are actually they're not even in the same place, actually, as what's on the plan. So that's one thing that I was worried about, that character, sort of Gothic character of the building would be lost. So I just wondered whether that's, just a rendering mistake, or whether they actually do intend to take those away, because that would change the character of it's a chapel-like character of that hall.
I think in the elevation drawings, as far as I understand, it's depicting just the outline of the windows, but again, that can be something that can be secured by condition to make sure the windows stay original, or samples are sent in before anything is, any changes are made to materials.
And sorry, actually, it's probably a question for Pip about the parking. This is a weird one, because this area has asked for parking controls, and they are going to be rolled out. So if these were in place, we could apply a no parking permit to it. So it's a bit of a strange situation. But so currently there would be no way we could put a parking restriction on this.
Not on a development of this size, we don't normally do section 278, where we would do the highway related works, but they will require highway licenses to do everything that's necessary for road safety. So when should they build, they have to have the licenses for the various things, and one of those licenses will be the impact on the highway that they've done, and that to be rectified but also made safe. That's really, no, but it won't. No, but if that required double yellow lines, yeah, that would be included in that. All I'm saying is, a bigger development would have it under a Section 278 contract. This would be under highway licenses, and it would be enforceable if they didn't concur to the things like that, the requirements of it. But I can advise my highway colleagues to consider even temporary parking restrictions like double yellow lines while you're awaiting the RPZ, or if it's going to be in there. It's a minor thing, because when they do their conditions, pre-commencement conditions, we're consulted on that with our highway colleagues are not allowed to release any licenses until they've fulfilled their pre-commencement conditions. So we do. It's not as tight as you would like, probably, but it is there. And as you said, there is an intention for the RPZ, so the timing might work out quite right. But there is a slight risk on that. But I will take that back to make sure that we ask them to consider that when the licences are applied for.
So the RPZ will need to be consulted on under a separate highways process. Yeah. So we in planning cannot guarantee that they would have we guarantee that have no spaces should there be an RPZ, but we cannot guarantee there will be an RPZ because that's a separate process, separate legal consultation. Is that all right, Caroline? Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm still a little bit like, damn, why haven't we got the RPZ yet? Well,
this may encourage residents to support that not all residents would naturally be supportive of some, because it will cover the whole area, so it will restrict many people. So actually, you know, Councillor Stone.
Yeah, I just wanted to, with all this space within this design, what I know this is kind of like a bit just like a chat really at the end of the day, to be honest with you. I'm concerned that there's so much space that it can be altered in the future date, because there's only two shower rooms, 6 with all this extra space. I'm really concerned about this design, and at a future date they're going to end up putting in more, possibly bedrooms. They could be putting in more shower rooms. They could be putting in more amenities, considering they have all this space. I'm just concerned. There's no question, to be honest with you. I'm just concerned.
So you want them to have smaller rooms so that they can't
be... No, I'm not asking them to have smaller rooms. Well, I'm asking them to have maybe no HMO at all. Maybe, you know, to be honest with you. Maybe, you know, maybe a family residential space.
Obviously, a lot of people do live in HMOs and need HMOs. It's not just... Not everyone lives in a family, you know, like it or not. Councillor Portney.
So this is a long-time HMO dweller. Lots of people live in HMOs. No one needs to live in an HMO. But just in terms
unfortunately, Guy, in the real world, which most of us live in, they do. And so, you know, most of us have got kids and live in them. We were students. We couldn't afford to buy a house because we weren't wealthy.
Yeah.
So, but you carry on from your
exactly the situation I was in too. Sorry, apologies. It was just to hopefully helpfully reframe my colleague's question. Is there anything that this committee would be within the powers of this committee that could reassure us that there could not be any future sort of redivision of the property to cram in yet more dwelling space?
So I think, in response to that, the description of development is for a 6-bedroom house in multiple occupation within the use class C4, which is a small HMO. So if there is intensification that kind of tips it over into a large HMO, that would be considered a material change of use. So at that point, when I referenced earlier that would be an enforcement matter, that would need to be investigated and may require further permission.
So we would have to make that decision. Could not happen without us making a decision.
No, that's great. That's really helpful. Sorry, I've remembered the case I was thinking of. It was not actually that far from here, but it was a case of where what I think had been repurposed as an HMO was being used as an Airbnb. A dramatically higher density than had been envisioned by the original planning application, and the committee was told there's nothing you can do because internal alterations are not a matter for planning. Apologies, but final query from me, if that's okay. I just wanted to just double check, apologies if it sounds like I'm labouring the same point. The severity test that's obviously been met based on the census data, I just want to check that relates solely to the residential aspect, not to any use of the hall at all. In other words, I just want to double check there is nothing in terms of the conditions or the assessment of the impact of the development on local traffic and parking that takes the use of the hall into account as being different from the nursery. I'm just thinking particularly near me there are a fair few nurseries. You see a lot of people walking their kids in or cycling their kids in or dropping their kids off quite quickly and then moving along. Whereas a community hall, potentially, you might see people, especially if it's having meetings in the evenings or later at night, you might see people driving there, going to a meeting for a couple of hours, going back to their car and then driving off. And I just wanted to check that there isn't any condition that I'm missing in here that's designed to reassure us around that, or any way that that's been assessed as part of the planning application.
I can't really put your mind at rest, but I can say that being told that the support for an RPZ means the whole curbside has to be reviewed in that area, and we have to include things like loading bays and all different things to, with the finite amount of curbside with the priority need, of that. But when it's consulted, then all of the community centre trips have to be counted in on that. So at some point in the not too distant future, that the holistic impact on that area has to be considered so that it's fairly apportioned, the space for the right things, and that any permit would definitely, that's the only thing I can say for today, is that the HMO, which is the application in front of us, will not be entitled to any permits. It doesn't, we weren't really looking at the effect of the main community place, but it was assessed by my team as a cumulative impact. But we couldn't ask the developer to put in a mitigation for it. So that's the best answer I can give you, I'm afraid.
No, thanks. And final thing, but just in terms of the, I just wanted to address the concerns raised by Mr. Hambleton in public forum, and in particular the community survey on road safety. And I would just invite comment from TDM on that. Obviously, this reads quite worryingly. 81% of people saying that parking issues have a dangerous impact on road safety in respect solely of what's there already. Appreciating we may see a slight reduction in traffic movement at drop-off and pick-up times for a nursery. I'm just wondering what you think the impact might be of the community hall being there in the evening on the evidence that we've had from local residents.
Sorry. It's difficult to say because we weren't specifically looking for an HMO about road safety. We were looking at the size of the application in the location and making sure the pedestrian access would be safe and things like that. But as I did mention earlier, they do have to apply for licences to do the work, and at that point we can suggest that they do they will have to do a road safety audit for the changes on that, any changes going with that road. But there will also be a road safety audit going along with the RPZ that my colleagues will be doing. So the road safety will have 2 trigger points for us to do. And we could say that road safety is a preoccupation. So a road safety audit preoccupation could be something that, but I would recommend that we really only link that to the licensing, because it would not normally be something that we would condition on something this size. But because of things, there are opportunities for that, so I'll leave that to my planning colleagues to decide whether that's of worth. But we can ask for a road safety audit before occupation.
Councillor Gooch again.
Yeah, sorry, it's just one more quick one. The frontage, you've got the sort of quite nice modern bit facing towards the chapel part, but then the frontage looks like it's fake windows. They're just recessed. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the originally submitted scheme.
It's been changed.
So in the
slide
artist
deck.
impressions,
Okay, go back to
it's
the
still
slide
shown
deck.
as that, but the approved plans would be the ones showing windows.
Sorry, I'm trying to go back to the pictures then. Page 11. Page 11 of what?
Sorry, on the slides it's counted.
On the slides it's page 11. Yeah, there's still blank windows on that. So, do we have any view at all of
We can't
impressions of what they look
redesign.
like?
We can't
No,
redesign the
okay.
scheme. We're here to approve what
No,
the
no,
applicant has.
I think if you have a look in the background papers, sort of the supporting documents, there are
Yeah.
elevations included in there, which I think show the relevant elevation with the amendments, which show the windows, the timber sliding
Yeah.
sash.
Yeah, I think my question would be, could we have, would there be any opportunity to get it to blend in a bit more, especially with the building directly opposite, which is only kind of 1.5 stories of red stone. So it's going to look quite incongruous opposite that.
Yeah, we aren't in a position as a committee to redesign the
Yeah,
application,
okay,
so that
yeah.
might be something, should it be approved, might be something you would like to organise for local residents and for the developer to sit down. Or should it not be approved, that may be something the applicant would like to take away as a comment on it. But I think as a committee we can't redesign a scheme like this.
Yes, fair enough.
And as for Gothic windows, as many converted chapels, actually one of the weaknesses of the living accommodation is the Gothic windows they had to retain, which you get half of it in the upstairs flat and half of it in the bottom downstairs flat. So it is going to be living accommodation, has to work.
Yeah, no, this is the Gothic windows on the hall.
Yeah, right. Okay. So I was saying they probably wouldn't want Gothic windows in their kitchen.
No.
They want to see what they're cutting their carrots up or whatever. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, I assume there's no more questions then. Shall we move on to councillor discussion? Please keep your comments as brief as you can. And we have nobody. Councillor Pulteney, I thought you put your hand up for a moment, but I'm delighted.
I'm always surprised when no one else wants to say anything.
Well, don't. They've all made up their minds and they're happy. It's okay. You
I'll
don't need
kick
to
us off then.
calm your anxiety.
So-
Anybody else? No.
I am minded, looking at the objections, I do think we have to take this very seriously.
We're all
Given what's
taking
in
it very seriously, Councillor Pulteney, please.
So, Chair,
Yes.
looking through the objections that the officer, I do think it's a genuinely very good officer report. There's a huge amount of detail for what is in some ways quite a modest application. And I don't think anyone on this committee would accuse me of being super permissive around HMOs. I genuinely don't think this is a case where we could say that there is a harmful concentration here. There is simply not another one for miles around. We might say that it'll have an effect on residential amenity, but it would really strike me as being quite reaching if that was the case. Equally, I think in terms of the impact the HMO itself will have on the residential parking situation, again, it might be negative, but it's de minimis. I think colleagues in development management, transport development management, have done a really, really good job in coming up with some quite creative solutions in the absence of any other parking controls to deal with that. I don't really have any concerns around that. What does worry me is the community survey saying that there is an existing serious problem with over-congestion at the same time as we know that there are community halls at either end of the road, that's an existing problem. And I don't know what the relationship is there, but we're also in a situation where we're looking at the community hall, the third on this row of streets. I don't know if they'll be competing for business at the same time. I don't know if they'll all be in use at the same time, but I genuinely have some worries around how many additional cars that hall might put in this space. And we don't have any conditions that we can bring to bear on it. We don't have any assessment of its impact. And that, at this point, I'm not saying it's a reason to refuse, I'm not even saying it's a reason to defer at this point, but that is the thing that we have genuine evidence of from the local community. It's giving me cause for concern, and I've not had anything to reassure me on it.
and it's true of almost any street in Bristol, unfortunately, that there is a problem with parked cars.
It's not the parking that worries me, Chair. It's the movement. It's the movement of, say, adding another 30 or 40 people using a third venue. And if it's being used in the evenings, people are more likely to use their cars. I know what the community halls were like in my old ward. Half the people would show up in a car if it was cold. And if you were doing your inclusion bit as well as you could, people would generally drive. The nearest bus stops are quite away. And I can't think of another street that has 3 community halls on it, quite so close together. That's my worry.
We do need community facilities, obviously. Councillor Stone?
Yeah, I agree with you, Councillor Alexander. We do need community facilities in the area, but they have to be well organised. Considering this used to be a nursery, I imagine there were cars coming backwards and forwards to it anyway, so that would have been, I suppose, that impact would have been kind of considered, or anyway within this application. The application seems to be like Councillor Pulteney has said, it's been well derived, and I must admit it seems to be a sizable HMO, which is quite unusual in these circumstances. So. Yeah, it's an interesting one, although I can hear some objections maybe about the aesthetics and the innkeeping, and I totally agree with the design and the innkeeping of any building should be, especially in such a significant conservation area. Don't know whether you can go back and get them to redesign it to make it more incongruous with the area, not too sure, maybe we could, don't know. So these are my thoughts, yeah.
Thanks. That's everybody, is it? Or Councillor Gooch?
Yeah, so the traffic thing, I think, I'd love to be able to have a conversation about the design and everything, but the traffic is my problem. There are a lot of cars parked on the streets. It's directly opposite a garage, which is a very busy garage, which is operating all the time. Westbury Park School's just down the road. We've got the church at either end with the church halls. We've got the shopping street 200 metres away. In fact, 2 shopping streets either end.
Lucky you.
Yeah. There is obviously the school. And there was an accident not too long ago on the junction, right by this. Because there are literally people trying to use it as a cut through all the time. It's an absolute nightmare of a road. So it's just that. I mean, ideally this would be a school street, but that's outside of the scope of this.
You have very high car
yeah.
very high car ownership
yes,
in that area.
We do. Lots of Chelsea tractors. So it's, yeah, and there's a lot of cars parked on the pavements and stuff. So it's that whole congestion part that really, really worries me, and the fact that it might then be extended, although there might be less at certain times. Now there's no nursery, then there's probably like going to be more in the dark, which is a consideration. I think that's my main worry, really, is the congestion part. The RPZ, we know is coming, and
consultation's coming.
The consultation's coming, and also there is going to be an extension of the HMO restrictions as well that covers this area, but that's not going to be in place. There is an HMO just down the road from this, so is it not already? So,
I want to confirm. My understanding was that this was in the Article 4 direction area already, isn't it?
I know it's moving.
Not if it's got less than 2 point. It might be in the licensing scheme area. Yeah. But there is some. Yeah. I mean, it's covered by more than planning.
It's in the new part of the area that's been proposed. So, but yeah, traffic is my safety really. It's my worry. I think.
Obviously, if we've got to choose between lots of big cars and accommodation for our kids, that's a discussion, isn't it? Yeah. Really, that we need to have. Yes, Lisa.
Thank you. Is that working? Yeah.
Yes.
Just on the increased traffic from the community hall, I'm correct, aren't I, that it has to be retained for community use of some description? on that site. So if it's not a community hall, it will still be some other form of community use, all of which will have the likelihood of attracting traffic or no. So that's just something to consider as well. We can't have it not be a community facility. So I'm trying to think of what community facility wouldn't attract some people by cars.
Someone might convert it to HMOs, in which case, you know, you're going to have a problem. If you've got a space there, somebody's going to use it for something. So, thank you for that, Councillor Stone.
Yeah, I was just looking at the old Google Maps, and there are bus services that were a 3-minute walk just around the corner, so people could bus in, bus out. They are considering car club, aren't they, as well, within the application, which I've noticed. So this could also be impactful on the use of cars going to and from that community space. Again, I'm really appreciative that this has been held as a community space, because we really do need more community spaces in the city.
And it's a point that's helpfully made in the TDM report. This is a highly sustainable location. You've got 3 community halls, you've got 2 shopping streets walking distance. You're not far from White Ladies Road, and you've got excellent bus services up and down there. So actually, especially for younger people these days, likelihood is you won't even get 6 cars out of there. I'd be surprised if they could afford it. That's the realistic truth. Okay. Can I propose the officer recommendation, as I'm required to do by the process, but would it be taking a liberty to add that condition that this should be a no-car development, should there be an RPZ? Are you happy that I propose that, or would you like me to just to propose it without that? Okay, so that's what I'm proposing. It's obviously a kind of Grampian condition because the consultation has not happened. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, we've got it on as an informative in the recommendation, and we can't actually have it as a condition.
We can't actually have it as a condition.
No, it's advisory, because we know it's imminent, the consultation. By the time, the risk is that they build it in 3 weeks, but basically that size of development can't be held responsible for the thing. The only thing we can do is use our advisories, which it is, but it will link with the RPZ consultation, which we will make sure that that advisory is consolidated within the RPZ consultation, so that nobody's confused about who isn't entitled to. And that's really that's the only thing within our control that we can actually do. Hopefully all you members will support the RPZ when it goes through.
Thank you. I was coming to the proposal, but so Lisa, this is your 3rd comment. Do you want to?
It's very good.
Yeah, okay.
Can you just confirm what we mean by that is that if the RPZ goes ahead after the consultation, that this HMO would not have RPZ permission, would not have parking permission if we put in that condition?
Yes, just to refer back to the report, at the end of the conditions that have been recommended, there's a section headed advices, and under there is one that relates to the restriction of parking permits in a scenario where there is a future controlled parking zone or a residence parking scheme, so it would be covered by that. That's right.
Okay, thank you. Guy?
It was just to say, Chair, to back up TDM on this one, I would say this is preferable. It means that not only do we provide colleagues with advice on how to deal with this situation moving forwards, it means we retain a degree of discretion if we really need it in the future without having to put it in place as a condition. And we also don't have to deviate from the protocol and amend the officer's recommendation in order to put it to the vote. I want to put colleagues' mind at ease. This is better than, I would say, tentatively, than doing it by condition.
Yeah, thanks. And being mindful of the size of the development, we can't attempt to solve all the problems of the neighbourhood off the back of a small development, because that's not going to, it's not going to wash with an inspector and, you know, for it's fair enough, really. So I'm going to propose the officer's recommendation, which is to approve with the conditions and advice as set out in the recommendation in the agenda papers. I'll go around. Councillor Pulteney.
We need a seconder, Chair.
Oh, it's second. Councillor Pulteney, will you second? He doesn't want to. Councillor Finch, would you second?
Yes, I can second.
Thank you. Okay. So we go around then for your yay or nay. Yay or nay, Councillor Pulteney? Or would you like me to start the other side while you deliberate? Then Councillor Gooch.
I'm going to say nay, simply because I can't do anything about that incongruity that we have, and the fact that I would like it to be set back. So no, I'm going to say no. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Durston.
Four.
For Councillor Badruddin. For Councillor Finch obviously seconded it. Councillor McCowie. For Councillor Stone.
For
Councillor Pulteney.
I'm going to say no and lose with some grace.
Okay, myself for. And so, by my rough calculations, 6-4. So the application is approved. Thank you very much. We now move on to the next item on the agenda. No, we can't have a break. We can't go straight through. No. We had 3 items on the agenda, Guy, when that was requested.
I know.
We have never taken a break between 2.
I'm just asking for
Yeah.
the requested one.
You did. You did request one, and we had a different agenda when you requested it, and I agree.
No, as in now. As a reasonable adjustment, I requested it.
Yeah, you absolutely can put that down in the minutes. You requested it, and I refused. Okay, and our next item on the agenda then is we'll move to just so I get the address right. Okay, 121 Cranbrook Road, and public forum. I have a list of names. Again, no need for me to be too rigorous with the timing.
I want to know if you want to ask the public that came for this one if they want to leave, or if they feel they want to stay.
Yes, if members of the public would not like to remain for this second one, you're very, very welcome to stay, but it's understandable if you'd like to leave, you're very, very welcome to do so. And thank you again for your attendance. You're an important part of this process, and your comments have been noted and have, informed our conversation today. So first person I have is Mr. Simon Birch. Mr. Birch, are you here? No. Mr. Graham, is it Pears or Piers?
Yep.
Apologies again if I get surnames wrong.
No, don't worry.
It's a standing, oh, even better. It's a standing apology, I'm afraid. I get people's surnames wrong sometimes.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I hope this cough doesn't keep annoying me and you. Anyway, we live next door to the development, proposed development, and we have been there for 37 years. And I wrote this I timed myself to try and get something I could do in a minute. So I'll read this first, and then if there's time to elaborate, I might do that. But basically, this is the wrong project for this area. If it was a flat plot, it would be completely different. It'll transform a little patch of paradise into a concrete hell because it's a really green, verdant area, or it was, and it's now going to be a concrete pit with huge concrete walls all around it. It's on far too big a scale for a garden in a terrace of 4 properties. It goes entirely against the character of the area in every respect. It tramples over ecology, wildlife and biodiversity without a second thought, as well as over the feelings of neighbours. It will massively degrade the amenity, including the visual amenity, which is such a strong feature here. The industrial scale excavation into a hillside will propose a high risk of slumping. It will cause seepage of huge volumes of groundwater and runoff of surface water. It used to be a grassy slope covered in vegetation, and again now it's going to be dug out and basically made into a concrete pit. The topography, which has been continually cited as a point in favour of this proposed extension, actually makes the proposed extension far more visible than if it was on a level plot. And the analogy here is, the reason is that they were saying that it's because it's below the ground rises above it, we wouldn't be able to see it from the side, presumably. But the reality is, picture an arena with a stage or a football stadium or anything. You have the seats around the top and you look down onto what's happening below. And the houses behind will be looking down onto the roof of this extension, which is going to be 7 metres wide by 5 metres out deep if it's allowed. And because the gardens around are so steep, every time you're out in the garden anywhere, you will be looking down onto this, forced to look down onto the stage, and you can't avoid it. So it will be really imposing from that point of view. And an issue about sunlight, you have to understand the topography of this area, because it's really unusual. It's a really steep bank, and 20 metres back from the house, it rises to about 8 metres high, and then beyond that, that's top of the gardens, and then beyond that, it goes to about another 6 or 8 metres, and then there are tall trees on top of that, and it's on the side of a valley. So when the sun comes, so as far as we're concerned, the effect on our patio of the sun rising is significant, because the extension roof is going to be quite high and sloping down, but because the sun comes in from this side and we get an arc of sun to about here, and after that it's blocked by trees and high ground and all the rest of it, there's quite a small area, time where we actually get the sun. And if you put something on top of up there like that, it blocks the sun. It casts a shadow far longer than its own height, so it actually blocks the sun into our patio and the back doors, the rooms at the back. And there's a proposed outbuilding to go at the end. So we're going to have like a 7 or 8 metre concrete wall, and then there's going to be a 2.5 metre high building on top of that at the end, which is also going to be made out of brick and whatever it is, grey brick. And that taken together with the big oversized extension is going to really add to the sense of enclosure. And anyway, it's the cumulative effect of all the individual decisions that sort of lead up to the recommendation that this should be passed. If you actually come and see the site and you envision how it is now or how it was and how it's going to be, the transformation is absolutely staggering. It's just crazy. And again, no one's come to visit the site, and that makes such a difference. I mean, it probably rises to the height of this, the wall will probably rise to the height of that ceiling almost from this sort of distance. So,
thank you.
Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Singh?
First of all, I'd like to say thanks for letting me speak, Chair. I'd like to highlight some of the points of my statement first and then make a personal statement straight after. So firstly, I'd like to support the planning officer's recommendation for an approval. The extension needed is for my elderly father, who has accessibility and mobility issues and also terminally ill and would like to speak today, but the stress has caused him to not. The design is atypical and in scale informed with the garden, and it will be adapted for accessibility for my father as well. The officer confirms no harmful impact on the neighbours' amenities. There's no breach of the 45-degree line, which has also been stated. There's no overlooking privacy, sunlight or overshadowing, according to the officer's report. The extension is at the rear of the property, so not visible from the street or the public realm. The existing trees and sympathetic design ensure a good integration with the property and area around. Might I add that at the rear of the property, the proposed outbuilding has already been passed by the council, and it is within all the criteria you've already set. Beyond that is an aviary which has 100-foot trees, so the sunlight is definitely going to be impacted because of those, which is owned by the previous speaker, I believe. The plans fully comply with the council's policy on DM27 and DM30, according to report. And the officer finds the proposal acceptable and respectfully request approval. On a personal note, I would like to basically request, we've been living in this property for a few months now. My mum's owned this property for 30 years and gave it to us for my children as well. We would like to create a garden for not just this generation, but the one after as well. Also to let my father, his final days, spend with his grandchildren. You know, councils come and go, MPs come and go, neighbours come and go. I'm trying to take the brunt of what's been hell for me and my family for the last year. My wife is signed off currently with mental health because of the amount of stress this is causing us. We feel victimised, and all we want is a resolution to this. You know, financially it's been a strain. My son asked me, can I have my birthday party in his house? I can't promise that. I've already let him down on Christmas because we can't have Christmas where it is at the moment. I just want an outcome. You know, the officers already recommended that we approve this, you know, and we're not asking for the world. We just want somewhere for our kids to play with their granddad in his final months, you know, and that's it really. That's all I have to say. We just, and sorry, yeah, to answer that, there has been people come to the property. The previous speaker has called building enforcement on us multiple times, and they've come to the property and they have looked at it, they've taken pictures, and every time they've said we can proceed. I have email chain currently with building enforcement who have said there's no problems with the outbuilding they've been raising concerns about. You know, at every turn we're just a young family trying to live our lives now, and we just want an outcome. We're not asking for the world, and you know, if 5 metres is too, we're trying to comply with what the council guidelines are. That's all it is, you know. So the garden as well is just not. It's not going to be a concrete jungle. You know, we want to put grass down. We're trying to keep as much turf in it as possible because it costs money to get rid of that turf. You know, it's not a cheap thing to just get rid of turf. We want to keep as much as we can. And why wouldn't I spend money on structural engineers and calculations? Do you think I want my house to fall down? Would anyone here want their house to fall down? It'd be stupid to do that, wouldn't it? So I've spent the money on it. All I'm trying to do now is have a house for my children, my grandchildren, and their granddad to at least spend his final days with them. You know, I can go on for hours about what I've been through over the last year, but I've just reached the end. I just want an outcome. And please, I ask, you know, you make whatever decisions you feel like, but we just, you know, we've been in there for, you know, just under a year. We've been going on in this building situation for 3 years. My kids live with a camping stove and an air fryer for a kitchen at the moment. We live upstairs. You know, I'd gladly welcome all of you to come and look how we live. You know, my son's is in the process of potentially being identified for learning difficulties. The stress of living in this house is not helping him. You know, we just want an outcome. That's all we want.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. You made that clear, and thank you. Councillor Fee-Hants.
Thanks for agreeing to having this come to committee, because I know it's a relatively small application and you might look at it and just go, oh, it's a little suburban application. And I don't often do this. I've been a councillor for 15 years. This is the second or third time I have brought something to committee. So what is the problem with this? I will tell you for why. I've visited the neighbour's property myself, so I've seen the back garden. I personally don't have a massive issue with the extension. I mean, it's chunky, but I don't think it's too bad. What I have real concerns about is the excavation and the groundworks that are involved. Two things. First of all, those back gardens, I mean, I've never seen elevation like that, quite frankly. They are unbelievable. Walking up the terraces of these back gardens, it's like climbing the north face of the Eiger. So, and also they are all very, very green. There's a swathe of green across the back, and already with what's constructed in that back garden, there's a massive difference there. So I am concerned about the impact this will have on the amenity, and I think it was planning number 26, I think it was, that says that such changes must improve or enhance the local neighbourhood. I don't quite see how that one works. The second thing is the hugeness of the retaining walls in these back gardens. These back gardens are probably not much bigger than this building, this room here, and the retaining walls on either side are going to be 6 metres at their tallest, and that is about 3 times as tall as me, probably taller than this wall here. So you can see why neighbours have got concerns about the retaining walls next to their properties. And as I said in my statement, you all read my statement, there is a possibility for having a desktop study for such things to give reassurance to local residents that this is indeed safe. I can see why they're worried, because it's huge and it's going to make a massive difference to the local kind of topography. That's probably my minute over and done with, isn't it, Don? I'm sorry, I was trying to keep it down to a minute.
I think you've covered everything, Fee.
Thank you very much. And thank you again, I really mean it, for agreeing to have this come to committee.
No, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Mr. Stuart Gibb. Mr. Owen Hoare. And Mr. I. Matthews. Mr. Matthews, welcome.
Good evening. I'm the occupier of the house on the end. It's a 4-terraced house, and the house in question is the one 2 houses down from me. So I'm not directly impacted by the construction of what's going on. But I've watched what's happening from my house. Now, I've got a degree in civil engineering. I haven't practiced for quite a while, but I was horrified with the standard of the soil work done for the platform at the top and a retaining wall with no foundations, which was cast. And I looked at this and I am concerned. I duly hope they have got some structural engineering advice now, because they're proposing this retaining wall for this platform. It's about 2.5 metres tall. They're going to put a retaining wall underneath that 2.5 metre retaining wall to make something about 8 metres tall in an event. And then they're going to put a room on top. That's a 10 metre tall wall, about 8 metres wide. It's going to be a huge slab and a huge impact on the appearance and the environment. My only other concern is the drainage. I know the drainage at the back of our house comes from the 2 houses above us. It goes down the back of our house right through to the centre. So we've got 6 houses on a standard drain about that size. Now, if we've dug out, if all that land is dug out and you can see the water coming down that hillside, you can quite easily overwhelm that drainage system. It's just a standard drainage system for houses and the drains at the back. And the yards at the back of our houses were originally a couple of metres wide, maybe slightly wider. But above that, you had soil and terracing to absorb the water. We grow a lot of hydrangeas in our garden. And I say that because hydrangeas absorb water. They absorb lots of water. And it really concerns me that if this happens, one day my back garden's going to be flooded. Their back garden could be flooded as well as our neighbours on either side. So just those 2 concerns. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone who didn't wish to speak and didn't get a chance? I don't have anyone else on the list, but they'd like to say it. Okay, thank you. I mean, you've very helpfully raised a wide range of issues, which provides a context for us in this. ranging from hydrology through to civil engineering. And obviously there are planning does not cover all of those areas. I even detect also some challenging personal relationships in there, which understandable have been precipitated by this story. I've asked officers to begin by clarifying what our role is, our regulatory role is as a planning committee, because there are things like building regulations, there are things like the Party Wall Act, there are other things which we cannot cover. We have enormous sympathy with, they're very important, but we do not cover them here. We look at planning policy, okay? And I've asked, and landscaping has been discussed, and greenery, and et cetera, et cetera. I've asked officers to, for the benefit of all of us actually, because it's a complex situation, you've made that clear, to explain to us what our role and remit is, so that we can be clear, first of all, what decision we are making. I'm sure there will be other areas, whatever decision we make, which will not be able to be picked up and will have to be dealt with in other places. But I think it would be helpful if we start with that. So Jonathan, would you like to open with giving us some guidance on that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you said, there are other regimes here that kind of interact sort of with these issues, and actually sort of some of those matters are actually covered under those separate regimes. But insofar as the planning assessment is concerned, obviously you have the report in front of you, and we'll say a little bit more about kind of some of those issues now in the presentation. Really, just to set the context, in terms of the MPPF, it's clear really that where a site is affected by land stability issues, the responsibility for securing a safe development rests with the developer and or the landowner. However, the MPPF does say that planning decisions should ensure that a site is suitable for its proposed use, taking account of ground conditions. We also have a local plan policy which relates to land stability issues, which is DM 37, and we will say a little bit more about that in the presentation. So those are some of the headlines from a planning perspective. And then in terms of some of those other regimes, there is, of course, the building regulations. We have liaised with our building control colleagues internally. As we understand it, the applicant, the developer, is making use of an improved inspector, so that isn't something that's being handled in-house by our own building control team. However, they have provided us with some very general observations which sort of may assist this evening, and they've just observed that the design and construction of the retaining wall they consider would not likely fall directly under the building regulations. However, there may be some interaction with approved document Part A, which relates to structures, if the construction impacts on new or existing foundations, and also the approved document Part H, which relates to drainage, may also be of relevance in relation to the hydrology issues. Then there is also the Party Wall Act. Again, that is another separate process, and there are certain provisions in there that may be of relevance to the development. Those include in relation to the building of walls and also excavation as well. The other thing just to mention is there is then a common law as well, which can include things relating to something that's referred to as the natural right to support, and that applies to land in its natural state, which can include gardens. I must stress, I just mentioned those other regimes really just to kind of highlight those, but as they are outside of the planning process, I'm not qualified to advise on them, and it isn't relevant to the assessment of the application, but I thought it would be helpful just to explain that before we move on to the presentation.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I found it helpful anyway.
Hello, good evening. So the... Oh, yes. That would help. So the address is 121 Cranbrook Road. Is for a 5-metre single-storey rear extension and works to level the rear garden. The reasons it's been referred by local ward councillor is the unacceptable impact on visual amenity for neighbours, the incomplete nature of the application, omitting significant groundworks needed to achieve the development proposed, and the cumulative impact of the series of developments on this site. Okay, so this is the red line location plan. And the existing site is a mid-terrace property with a large rear garden. This is the site prior to any works. As you can see, it's got the kind of terraced effect of these different levels. Yep, and then this is it more recently, and you can see that it's been partially excavated. It's been dug out at the top of the garden. There's this retaining wall that's been built for the outbuilding, and you can see it's very steeply sloped. It's located on the border of the Cotham and Redland conservation area, but not within the conservation area. And between the site and the conservation area are these trees that can't be removed without prior consent. You can see again, this is kind of an aerial view, which gives you an idea of the kind of topography of the site and compared to neighbouring properties, and also the thick vegetation to the rear. And then this is the proposal. It's 5 metres in depth, almost the full width of the host dwelling, and 2.5 metres at the eaves. So following request, we got further plans to include the full excavation of the rear garden. As you can see, there's this brown line which shows the existing level, kind of slope of the garden, and then this is going to be the works done, so it will all be kind of hollowed out. There'll be 3 levels, one at the bottom, one here, and then going up to the top level, which has the outbuilding on. If you kind of note the slope of the existing land and the height of the proposed extension, they're quite a similar height. And this is the proposed layout of the garden, so it'll have the stairs going up the sides and round. Relevant site history, so there's been quite a few applications on the site, notably a certificate of lawfulness for the outbuilding and a rear dormer that was approved in January this year. There was also a prior approval application for the same dimensions as the current proposal for a rear extension. That was refused, but I'll go into that in further detail in a minute. There's also 2 enforcement cases on the site. The first one was kind of revolving around works in advance of planning permission and also removal of some trees. This was closed with no further action, as it's not in a conservation area. The removal of the trees there's nothing we can really do about that. There's also a current enforcement case that's pending consideration. Okay, so this is the prior approval app. It was refused because it didn't meet one of the requirements of the GDPO. However, it was considered that the proposal wouldn't have a negative impact on neighbouring amenity, and that was included within the report of that application. Okay, neighbour consultation. So 4 neighbouring properties were consulted and objections were received from 3 neighbouring properties. The concerns were mostly surrounding the excavation works to facilitate the extension, the loss of trees previously, drainage issues, land stability and structural integrity of the retaining walls, the impact on neighbouring amenity and the visual impact of the proposal. Following a change in the description of development, a further consultation period was taken and more comments were received, generally reiterating the previous points. There was also, as part of one of the comments, a professional land use report submitted. This found unknown holes and identified past industrial land use, which raised concerns for land contamination and land stability. Following this report, we then consulted contaminated land to get a better idea of of the potential for contaminated land because of the past industrial land use. They advised that a condition for if unexpected contamination is discovered is applied. Full details will be at the end of this presentation. Contaminated land also highlighted that further consideration should be given to the unknown holes identified in the land use report, but could not offer any formal comments regarding these. Conditions have been added to cover the concerns relating to land stability and drainage, with full details at the end of the presentation. Okay, so the key considerations are split into two groups. So the impact on neighbouring amenity and design. For the impact on neighbouring amenity, given the rear garden is steeply sloped and the height of the proposed rear extension is limited, similar to that of the existing raised garden, the rear extension would take up land currently occupied by the raised garden. As a result, this would have limited impact on neighbouring amenity. With regards to the design, as the property is mid-terrace and not highly visible from the public realm, nor the setting of the conservation area, given that it's partially obscured by the trees to the rear, the proposal will not impact the character of the street scene. And whilst it's regrettable that the sloped garden will be lost, it's not highly visible, so considered acceptable in this instance. So to conclude, the application is recommended for approval given the limited impact on neighbouring amenity and limited impact on the character of the surrounding area. This would be subject to a number of conditions. This is a summary of the conditions that we would apply. So the first one would be a condition for the supply of a construction management plan. The second would be a condition for sustainable drainage system. The third would be a condition for unstable land assessment. And the fourth one would be a condition for unexpected contamination. There would also be a number of informatives applied. These would be advice relating to potential proximity of a former quarry, and radon advice, and UXO advice. And these are the full conditions that would be applied.
Thank you very much. That's a complex project. I'm going to try and focus us on our part of it. If you members will help me with that, I'd appreciate that. So do you have any questions, please, councillors? Okay, Councillor Durston.
Thank you. Can you just confirm with the conditions that would be applied to the application, can you sort of confirm how we would make sure that those were complied with and met?
So a lot of them have requirements before development takes place, that they'll have to apply for these conditions to be discharged, so that will have to be done.
And just as well to add, in relation to the condition 3 that we're now proposing to recommend relating to the unstable land assessment, again, we would have sort of technical consultees that we would involve in the consideration of that as well.
Okay, so it's that intersection of the things which is complex, I think, for everyone to understand, in that you would obviously require a professional assessment, but the local planning authority would not then 5 or 10 years' time be dealing with problems caused by unstable land or whatever. There would be another regime that would have to pick up the actual implementation of that. We need to do our kind of due diligence to make sure this is a reasonable proposal, I think, as was said in the MPPF, in terms of the site. Is it a reasonable proposal? Yes or no? And then it moves on to another regime, which then picks up the... is that fair? Or is it too simplistic?
So in terms of the reason for recommending that condition, really that's solely in relation to policy DM37, unstable land, and the requirements there that where there's reason to suspect potentially unstable land, as we have in this situation, it's appropriate in the first instance to ask for the desk-based study, which is what we'll be seeking to do through the condition, and then further investigation if necessary. And that really is following on from the comments that we've received from contaminated lands that have identified potential historic use, and just given the nature of the proposal as well, and the significant excavation that is proposed.
Thank you. Caroline, I think, was next.
Yeah, so I can understand the bit about the extension itself, but are we also considering the changes to the garden and the building at the back, or is that not included in the planning permission?
The outbuilding to the rear isn't included. That's already been approved under a certificate of lawfulness. It's just the kind of excavation works to the garden that we're also considering.
Okay.
Councillor Finch was next.
Thank you. I was interested in the enforcement inquiry that you mentioned that's about the development to the front and rear gardens without planning permission, and that's still pending. How does that interact with this? Because to me it seems like they're really linked and that's problematic.
So I think it will depend on the outcome of this, whether the enforcement case is then picked back up. If it's refused, then it will be picked back up, but if not, then it will be closed because this will then have permission.
I think quite separate. No.
I interpreted that as being they're not separate at all, and that the outcome of the enforcement case will depend on the decision we make today, so very much linked.
Okay, in that sense, what I wanted to suggest was that that history is not a reflection on the applicant in any sense, and that would feed into the thing. We don't consider the applicant as a person having a history with the LPA, positive or negative or problematic or whatever. We look at the application in front of us. But yeah, we're both right on that, I think.
Understood, yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Pulteney.
Sorry, I wanted to just check something that Diane said at the start of the hearing in respect of, was one of the policies that you mentioned DM26?
I didn't mention that, but I think it's come up through other comments.
What I wanted to check was DM26 obviously talks about things like responding appropriately to existing landforms, green infrastructure assets, local patterns of scale. What was the other one? Responding appropriately to height, scale, massing, shape, form of existing buildings, building lines, that sort of thing, and reflecting predominant materials. It sounds from the officer's report as though that policy is solely visual, as in if you can't see it, it doesn't matter. Is that correct? Is that the reading of the policy? Is that the interpretation?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think this is, the decision for the committee tonight really is, is the development acceptable in terms of that policy? I think just having a look at the assessment, I mean, we've noted that, I think it's also been mentioned that, the rear gardens are sort of terraced to some extent there just because of the quite significant change in levels. So in that context, whilst this is quite an unusual proposal and is quite significant, I think we feel sort of on balance that it is acceptable sort of with regard to that policy.
Councillor Gooch.
I noticed there was an objection from the water company. Is that something that we should be taking into consideration, or is that involved in all of these conditions and stuff?
Oh, sorry. Pip's got a hand up. Pip, come on in.
Well, mainly because part of their conditions are about discharging their drainage, and that will be, so it's it's quite common for the water companies to alert that there will be work required to make it. So we can't have any draining onto the highway, that's illegal. There's lots of things, but there is a process.
Yeah.
And that's, so they have to adhere to all these things. So the planning comes first, then, but they've got to discharge all of these things like the construction management, everything like that. But utilities are statutory quantities, so they, at each stage, they have to be consulted and be satisfied that it would work.
So they're not happy at the moment, but the conditions would make them happy.
My experience is that when it's such dramatic topography,
Yes.
and a change to that topography, they would put that alert on there, but it wouldn't be it's surmountable.
Yes.
So that's the challenge to the applicant, is to surmount that to their satisfaction. And that would be the same for most of the elements around there. There's so many conditions that are about them fulfilling those things, and the construction management and the way they remove all their detritus from the site is part of that, and it all requires licenses. So there's a lot of control that we can put on it, even though the retaining wall bit isn't actually impacting on the highway directly, where then I could step in, but I can't on this instance.
Okay. I mean, it's a very, very challenging site, a very challenging proposal, actually. Councillor Finch?
Okay, yes, thank you. On slide 10 of that pack, I just had a couple of questions. So can I just confirm the green line, is that the proposed line of where the land will be? Or is it just going to be, it's going to be flat? Okay, what is
it's going to be flat. So the
green line is the staircase?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of all the, obviously there's a lot of walls going on, which of those walls were already approved as part of that shed at the back? Were any of them approved?
None of them have been approved.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Poultney, and then hopefully we can move to discussion.
Apologies. The 45-degree test reads as though there, from the report, as though there are two different ways of doing it. One that says this application breaches it, the other says that it doesn't. There's an item of public forum that suggested, no, the one that says that it doesn't is the right way of doing it. Is this an on-balance case? Is it an either-or test? What should we take from that?
So it doesn't breach the 45-degree line on elevation plan. It does on floor plan. However, because of the topography of the site, that is not considered to be a problem because the existing slope would also breach that 45-degree line on floor plan.
Okay, great. Let us then... sorry, Jonathan, yes. Would you clarify?
Sorry, just
I'm
really
not sure I
briefly.
got that one either.
Well, it was actually on
It's
something
my fault.
separately. Actually, I just wanted
the receiver, not the...
just sort of before we moved on to the debate, there was just one thing I just wanted to clarify, just with respect to the outbuilding, if that's okay, because again, I would just refer members to the description of the development here. So it doesn't include the outbuilding as part of this application. So just to say that a lawful development certificate has previously been granted for an outbuilding, which confirmed that based on the information that we saw at that time, we considered it to be lawful. So we considered it to be permitted development. But that obviously didn't include the excavation and the walls that we're seeing now. Okay, so it's really just to clarify that point.
Okay. Right. That's all right, Lisa. Yeah, Karen.
It's just about the retaining walls, but
Yeah.
I can't quite get my head round when people are talking about them being 6 foot high.
Meters.
How does that? Can you just talk through that a bit more for me?
Normally a wall would require planning permission if it's over 2 metres, wouldn't it? This is 6 metres. So does it require planning permission or is it underground?
Yeah, it does. And here we're in a situation where what's proposed would be considered an engineering operation, which in itself is considered to be development.
So it would be 6 metres from the ground up?
It would be, yeah, I believe so, from sort of the new ground level that's being proposed.
6.7 metres.
Sorry, just to clarify on that, it would be sloping though, so it would be 6.7 at the highest point, surely, and it slopes down with the land on the other side.
So because this would all be kind of like hollowed out, so this would be the retaining wall that's 6.7 metres.
So is that back wall that's 6.7?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you'd need retaining walls on both sides as well.
Yeah.
And won't they be sloping down, so there'll be 6.7 at the top? Well, I know they have to be solid, but you wouldn't have them going all the way across to the top of the building, would you?
No, yes, they follow the curve,
They'll be
presumably, of the
okay.
boundary.
Sloped or stepped down, okay.
Councillor Finch, your final comment?
Thank you. Yeah, on that question then, that seems concerning to me that, you know, these are really big walls and we're not seeing 2 of them at all. You know, we don't know where the tops of those walls are going to be, if they're going to, you know, cut into the neighbouring view, if that makes sense, or if they're going to be at ground level. I'd say that's quite important instinctually, that we would need to see the plan for the side walls as well as the back wall.
Yeah, I think if that was of concern to members, we could add an additional condition relating to details of those boundaries and the boundary treatment.
Pip?
Well, it's just to say that if it was impacting on the highway, I could ask for something called an approval in principle, that the wall would be built to that. When it's solely in a private area, it's normally something that a mortgage company or an insurance company would ask for. So they again are the surmounted things that the applicant has to deal with, which, you know, so we've conditioned where we can, but these ones will be to do, and the neighbours then do have powers to ensure their mortgage isn't impacted and things like that, but they're outside of the planning thing, but they are the things that the applicant has to surmount in order to have the whole thing done to the standards. So that's what we considered, that what we could ask for, and then be very clear what's a planning matter, and then what is, you know, not trying to hide what the surmountables are, but or how much they cost, but they are things that do have to be agreed for the people who would insure, stroke, mortgage or anything like that, and their neighbours. So that's why we thought we put the conditions that we have, because they're ones that we've got direct control over.
Okay. Thank you. So we're not deciding whether something is financially a good project or not. We're not deciding whether it's technically possible, because none of us here, I don't think, are civil engineers. It is technically possible, but at a cost. You know, we're looking at the planning part of the process for something that may never actually happen. That will entirely up to the applicant whether he wishes to pursue this, given the conditions that are put on it, whether that is desirable, whether he decides to buy another house or something like that. There may be all kinds of outcomes, but we have this fairly narrow remit of things with the conditions, pointers to other regimes that need to be given consideration so that the applicant can take away our decision, be positive or negative, and work from there. I realise it's a complex application in that sense. Okay, is there any discussion we need to have? Do we want to quickly do that because time has moved on? Councillor Portney.
Thanks, Chair. I really do. I don't say this often enough, how much I admire the officers that prepare these reports. This is the second time I think you specifically have come with incredibly knotty, difficult cases. So it's just to say well done. It's a really comprehensive report, and it's genuinely a lot easier to get your head around than I would have expected. It is a really difficult one. My concerns in this one, I look at the wording of policies like DM26, the need for development to contribute towards local character and distinctiveness by reflecting the predominant materials, colours, textures, landscape treatments and boundary treatments in the area. DM27 talks about the layout, form and pattern of open spaces. Landscape design is expected to contribute to a sense of place with safe and usable outdoor spaces. It's so radically different. It's a design that has so little respect for the topography and the geography and the environment in which it sits. And I've seen proposals come forward relatively frequently for like relatively modest, comparatively, buildings in the backs of gardens that we've looked at and been quite sceptical towards because it's garden grabbing, because it's a loss of some green space in an area where that green space is expected to have a sort of reasonably consistent form across the area as a whole. Now, a lot of that doesn't apply here, but in this case...
Thank you. Thank you.
As I say,
thanks.
I can appreciate there are lots of things that we don't know about what this will be, but what we do know is that the topography will come along at an angle. It will suddenly drop down at a height of almost 7 metres for 5 metres and then go straight back up.
It's like a bowl, isn't it?
And appreciating that most people's instinctive reaction is to go, that's an engineering problem to be fixed and therefore not for us. That doesn't mean it's not also a planning problem. And to me, this is too much of a planning problem.
It could be a cliff with hanging plants.
But it would still be a cliff where there was no cliff. And very few people have ever spoken about the need for additional cliffs in this particular part of the city. I don't buy, I'm afraid. I appreciate what the officer's saying in respect of this won't be visible from the street, from someone just driving down or walking down this street. But it will be there. It will certainly be visible to everyone that lives there, and it will fundamentally, potentially permanently, change the geography of that part of land. And on that alone, I would feel comfortable saying no to this one.
Okay. Anyone else got any comments? Councillor Stone.
Yeah, I know we're not structural engineers. I understand that completely, but it is a bit severe, isn't it? A 6 foot a metre kind of like retaining wall. It's the weight of it's the weight of everything behind it. It's the weight of what's on top of it. It just feels interesting, and considering either side, we're going to have retaining walls either side. Possibly, you know, they'll be with the neighbours' walls, but the overshadowing, you know, of this bowl. I mean, I don't know whether or not they could actually grow grass at the bottom of it. To be honest with you, you know, so it's quite a complicated thing.
I think, yeah. that's, yeah. Okay, anyone else got any particular comments on this?
Just to say, you know, I sympathise with everyone involved, actually, because I think it's you've got yourselves into quite a difficult situation, and I think it's going to cost a lot of money to do this right.
It is. We've ensured that this is now a major project, which possibly will not be viable. However, that is our duty.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I think that's the, you know, we've got to do it as from just the planning grounds, and with all of these conditions attached. Even though, yeah, I think it's just crazy to be excavating that amount of earth and all the you know, the ongoing stuff that goes with it. But I think we just have to go let all the other groups do their bit, and we just do our bit. So, but yeah, I'm sorry for all of you, I think, that about the situation.
Councillor Stone, you've already made a comment, but do you want to make another quick one? You feel welcome, but yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes in these committees we have to also look at some due diligence as well. We have to understand that here we have a situation where there's a huge amount of soil being removed. There's a 6-metre wall being put up that's meant to retain. We've got, you know, the idea of flooding issues, collapsing issues, God knows what other issues, when we can actually just stop it right here and now, you know, instead of going down on that path.
Yeah, it's not for us to stop people doing things with their back gardens, in my opinion. There's a liberties issue there. It is about telling people what we require legally in order for that to be done safely and respectfully for the neighbours, and then allowing them the freedom to make that choice. We don't just stop things because it's not a good idea. Yes, Councillor Finch.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to echo Caroline's point about, everyone involved having my sympathies, and it sounded like a really challenging situation. From my perspective, I feel like I don't have enough. And, you know, this is not on the officers at all. I really appreciate all the work you've put into this. I feel like I don't have enough information to be able to approve this. You know, we've got this one, there's lots of stuff about the extension itself, but in terms of the excavation work and the walls and, you know, the larger scale work to the back garden, we're just relying on this one diagram from one angle. We're not seeing what's happening with the walls on the side. It's hard to get a picture, I guess, of exactly what that's going to look like. So yeah, it feels like there's information missing, and then we're relying on conditions to make up for that missing information, which I just don't feel comfortable with.
Councillor Gooch, yes.
Yeah, could we actually condition that? Can you bring us back those walls, or can we say yes, and the walls will come back for planning approval?
I think there comes a point where you allow officers to take that forward or not. You know, you say broadly speaking, we think this will work or it won't work for us in terms of our policies, and now we hand it over to officers having listened to our comments. I mean, as a committee, we don't have the technical ability to design a supporting wall, you know, or even it would be like a lecture from an expert to me. It would have to be. That's where I would sit. Yeah.
Don't the neighbours have some sort of say in what this wall's going to look like that are on both sides? So will they have any comment?
Well, this is not something that's visible from the street. You know, you can't buy a view. I don't have a say on what my neighbour's garden shed looks like. If he wants to paint it pink, he can paint it pink. And that's his right. You know, this may be a well-off area, but you don't buy the view. Just like you don't in where I live, you know. So we have to be careful about, you know, what we say people can and can't do with their own property. Councillor Pulteney.
It's just to say, Chairman, and I do agree. We have to be looking at, in this context, the planning policy that's in front of us. And this is the thing that I find most difficult with this one. You could object to your neighbour painting something pink if it was damaging to the visual amenity, if it was out of keeping. There are all sorts of planning reasons why you might be able to. There are all sorts of planning reasons why it might be perfectly permissible. But what I'm saying is, there's a temptation with this case to view it from one angle, that being the one of the engineering problem and the giant retaining walls and the need to assess the desire to assess the engineering, which is not within our remit. I concur completely, but that does not then rule out all of the other planning policies that we would normally bring to bear. And I think because this is so extraordinary, it's so unusual, it's so, dare I say, out of keeping, it kind of blinds us to the ability to go, hang on, if this was more modest, if this was slightly small, if this was just, say, let's flatten the whole thing all the way up, or if it was 2 meters rather than 6 meters, it might be more sort of manageable in terms of assessing it on normal planning grounds, but it's an application that in some ways defies all of the normal analysis we would bring to bear. But I keep coming back to those policies that we noted at the start. DM26.
Which is what policy, remind me?
So the need for development proposals to contribute towards local character by reflecting the predominant materials, colours, textures and landscape treatments.
And that includes back gardens?
Yes. Landscape treatments.
That's interesting.
There is nothing here that could possibly be said to reflect the predominant landscape treatment. It's a wedge being cut out of the predominant landscape treatment. Equally, DM27, the layout, form, pattern and arrangement of open spaces should contribute to the quality of urban design. How does this contribute to urban design? It doesn't contribute to a sense of place. It literally cuts a chunk out of the local place. We have policies that say extensions and alterations should respect the sitting scale, form and proportions of materials of the overall design. How does it do that? I appreciate an awful lot of these policies say, look, it should be roughly like what's there already. This is so completely different to what's there already that I think we would require a really radical justification to accept it. I would also really struggle to call this sustainable development in terms of the tilted balance. I would genuinely be interested in legal advice on whether this constitutes that, given our present situation. But as it is, I can't say that this isn't a radical departure. It's not like it provides additional housing or dwellings or bed spaces or any of the normal things that we associate with a very permissive approach to development, management and planning.
It does allow for people to live together in one house rather than buying another or building another, doesn't it?
I'd happily take that on board.
Great.
And as I say, I genuinely, in respect to the extension, I don't have a problem with it. It's the radical departure from what's there at the moment that I'm finding really challenging in this case. And on that basis, unless someone gives me a really, really good reason for saying this is better than what's there, or this is even on balance preferable, I can't vote to grant this.
Thanks. We can't redesign it. We've got to deal with what's here. Councillor Finch, is that, and then I think we'll move to the vote.
I'd also just like to echo that. I don't see any problem with the extension. It's the other landscaping works that are concerning to me.
Okay. Thank you. Right. So let's move to the vote. I will propose the officer's recommendation, which is approval. Does anyone want to second that? Anybody? No? Okay. Councillor Badruddin, you second it. So approval, I will go round. We are putting the motion, the officer's recommendation to approve. Councillor Pulteney, for or against?
Against.
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 For.
For.
On the grounds that, yeah, it's somebody's back garden. I think a lot of these things the council is talking about don't apply to things that you can't see from in the public realm. So I'm going to go for.
And I'm for. So we have, is it 5 and 4?
4.
Is it 4 and 4? 1, 2, 3. Let me count this up. Of course, we changed the numbers, haven't we? 1, 2, 3. In that case, I'm for, so it's approved. Thank you. Okay, and the date of that application is approved. The date of the next meeting is. I know it is. Before you go, everyone, the date of the next meet. Quiet, please, in the cheap seats. The date of the next meeting is Alison. Oh, sorry, I should have it on here as well.
I think it's the 7th of January.
Something like the 7th of January. So I'm not going to wish you a Merry Christmas because it's completely ridiculous in November. But I hope to see you all well on the 7th of January.